Hey horror fans, so I know this channel is usually about movies and movie related content, but as a horror fan, one of my favorite things besides horror movies is Universal Orlando's Halloween Horror Nights. I've been going since 2017, and minus, that one fluky year we're all trying to forget, I've been consistently going and I love every single year, some more than others. But with the excitement that comes every single year, there's always the announcements and the hype list that us fans create of what are we most excited to see every single year. Once again, we get 10 houses this year, so today we're going to look at all 10 houses. I'm going to give you the brief description that Universal gave us, and then I'm going to kind of rank them and give you my general thoughts and excitement levels for each of the houses, counting down from 10 all the way to my most anticipated house this year for Halloween Horror Nights. At number 10, we have The Exorcist Believer, and the brief rundown that we got from Universal Orlando about The Exorcist Believer is: Angela, Catherine, two missing girls have been found with no memory of what happened to them. But wherever they went, the ultimate evil has returned with them. Witness a chilling chain of events as you enter the most terrifying scenes from the new Blumhouse film. Now, I gotta be honest, I watched the trailer to the new Exorcist Believer, and I was thoroughly unimpressed. By and large, exorcism movies just don't really appeal to me. That being said, I love Exorcist Part 3. I think it's probably my favorite of the entire franchise. Yeah, I'll go out and say that. I also have a crazy conspiracy theory with this house. I think that Universal and Blumhouse thought that when they dropped the trailer, it would be better received, because this got announced at the same time as a slew of other things, but the only thing that got an actual trailer announcement video was this house. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was set to be its own individual announcement, and then when the trailer went over like a wet fart, they quickly shuffled and just kind of added it to the rest of the announcements. Now, who knows? This house could surprise us, but this feels like the obligatory commercial that we kind of always get at Horror Nights in some way, shape, or form, whether it was 2019 with Zombieland Double Tap as a scare zone, which I don't hate as much as some other people, but boy, it was a scare zone that happened that year. There's always at least one or two things that blatantly just feel like they're there for advertising. So I was kind of underwhelmed with the trailer. I don't really know what to go with this. Exorcism just don't really do it for me in a movie sense, but who knows? This is the one that could potentially surprise me the most, and I could really like it, but as it stands right now, yeah, this is the one I'm probably going to end up doing last of all 10 houses. At number 9, we have Chucky, the Ultimate Kill Count. And the description for Chucky Ultimate Kill Count is as follows. Chucky, the serial killer doll, is back for a new gore fest. He's hijacked his own haunted house with all kinds of bloody hijinks. You and your friends must try to survive his ultimate kill count. Now, this for a while was my number 10 spot, and then, Exorcist Believer came along and just snatched that away. But also, another reason why this moved up at least one spot for me is the Universal Orlando podcast themselves kind of came out and gave some more details about this house and said that it was going to be a very meta house of they built this haunted house, and then Chucky came along and was like, hey, why isn't anybody actually dying in this haunted house? Why are all the scares fake? So now Chucky has hijacked this haunted house and is killing off people. I'm not the biggest Chucky fan. Killer dolls don't really do it for me. But that's a clever enough premise that I will go in with a much more open mind than I am currently going into Exorcist Believer with. I think this could be interesting. I didn't particularly love the Chucky Scare Zone from a few years ago, but this is interesting enough and unique enough that I'll go, okay, I'll give this a shot. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. At number 8, we have The Darkest Deal, and the Darkest Deal description that Universal gave us is: The darkest deal. Fame is fleeting. Fear is forever. Blues musician Pine Straw Spruce will have to face the music after meeting with the Collector and trading his soul for musical glory. You and your squad learn the terrible price of fame. Currently, this is slotted in the 8 hole just because I honestly don't really get a whole lot from that description. There's a lot of different routes they can go, but I just don't know what direction specifically, artistically, we're going with this. There's a lot of interesting routes. It's that age-old story of, would you sell your soul out to the devil for fame and fortune and immortality and then ultimately pay the price later? I'm curious to see how that's going to play out in a house. it's an original, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times they come up with really, really clever and inventive stories for their original concepts as opposed to their IPs. Not saying to do a bad job with their IPs, but they, as a creative team, do really interesting and unique stories from scratch, basically, with their originals. So they have earned my trust in the originals department that I'm curious. This just seems kind of, I don't want to say vague, but it's not narrow enough in its focus, at least from this description, that I'm overly hyped. I'm curious about it, and there's a lot of interesting potential for this to jump up my list of what I'm really excited for, or once I see the house and see what they're going for, I could be like, oh, cool. I'm surprised I didn't think of that before. It's just, from the description and from what we're hearing about the house so far, I just don't know where we're going with it. It could be super, super cool, or it could be a swing and a miss. I don't know. This is the one that I'm the most scratching my head about, not in a positive way, not in a negative way. It's leaving me curious, and that's probably a good thing. At number 7, we have Blood Moon Dark Offerings, and the official description from the Universal website is as follows. Bleed for the Blood Moon. In a colonial-era village, moon worshippers witness a blood moon at their fall festival. They take it as a sign to hunt down any non-followers, including you and your Scream Squad. Okay, can we just stop with the whole Scream Squad thing? I don't hate it nearly as much as some other people, but it's just dumb. I don't like it. But on the flip side, like actually getting to the house itself, this is slightly higher than the Darkest Deal just because I'm curious more about the setting. I really like Robert Eggers' The Vivitch, or The Witch, if you want to be normal about it, I guess. I really like interesting period pieces, and I think colonial era could be a lot of fun. I think this is clearly going to be the gore house of the year with a name like Blood Moon. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory right there. It all depends on just I don't know. This is also like the Darkest Deal of, it seems pretty straightforward, but more straightforward than the Darkest Deal, if that makes sense. I'm on board. I think this sounds interesting enough. I like history. I like interesting locales. I'm hoping that this is not a Spirits of the Coven situation, and maybe if anything, it's the redemption of Spirits of the Coven. But this is clearly the Blood House. It's cool. I like that colonial America aesthetic. Just how much are we going to lean into that? Is there going to be, if this is the Vivitch, is there going to be a Black Phillip type character? I would be okay with that. Is there actually the deity that they are fearing and praying to? Are we going to encounter said deity by the end of this house? At number 6, we have Dr. Oddfellow's Twisted Origins, and the description is, your soul is a price he's willing to pay. You won't be able to resist going inside Dr. Oddfellow's menacing menagerie of twisted oddities, but the price for you and your friends is steep. The cost of your souls to feed his immortal power. I am totally on board with this. This kind of sounds like an even more twisted and evil and demented version of Todd Browning's Freaks from, was it 1922, somewhere around there? That's a messed up movie if y'all haven't seen that. That's, whew, but I'm okay with that circus aesthetic. I think that's always a super fun and interesting locale. I also, since I came later to the Horror Nights lore and kind of had to find the research myself later on, I was not overly familiar with the early HHN icons lore of Jack the Clown, the Usher, and whatnot. But I've learned through the years the significance of the Oddfellow character and what it means to the life and legacy of HHN history and lore. So I think it's going to be super cool to expand upon that lore and kind of delve further into a character that's integral, but we've never really gone super deep on them. We kind of just go, yeah, let's go to Jack instead. This could be super cool. We could be going a Todd Browning Freaks direction. We could be bringing back the Carnival of Carnage type. Carnival of Carnage from 28. Was that what it? Carnival Graveyard from 28. We could be bringing something like that back, of a dilapidated circus. That could be what we're going for. I also would not be at all surprised for a Jack cameo at some point in this house. That kind of makes sense to me. But I'll also be curious to see how this house influences the rest of the park, because all 5 scare zones have some form of Oddfellow influence. So they're all going to tie back into Oddfellow. So it's just a matter of how much will that house connect to the rest of the zones. I think that's really cool, unique. like cohesive idea to bring all the scare zones together, and I'm sure they'll connect back to the house at some point, of having some umbrella of connective tissue throughout the park. I like when the event itself has one cohesive theme. At number 5 is where I'm going to start losing some people. At number 5, I have Dueling Dragons Choose Thy Fate. And the description for Dueling Dragons Choose Thy Fate is, no matter who you choose, you lose. 2 warlocks of great power were turned into dragons after trying to take Merlin's spellbook. Now you and your friends are caught in their epic battle. You must choose a path and a victor. I say I'm going to start losing some people in this one just because I know there's a lot of people within the HHN community that are really, really looking forward to Dueling Dragons, and that's awesome. I'm very curious to see how this pays off. So for those that don't know, Dueling Dragons itself used to be a ride at Universal's Islands of Adventure, which got replaced with Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure, which I know there's more story and lore involved with Dueling Dragons, but I think Hagrid's is the much better coaster. In those latter years of Dueling Dragons, the ride was really starting to show its age, but I think it's cool that Universal is celebrating its past and bringing it back as a house. So essentially, 2 dueling warlocks got turned into dragons, and on the ride itself, you got to choose if you're going either the red path or the blue path. I don't believe we're actually going to be like choosing 2 separate like houses within a house to choose from. I think there'll be some choosing elements, but I don't think the full path will be like a choose your own house. That would be cool. I just don't know about logistically if that would be the most smooth operationally for Universal, if that makes sense. I'd be super down for it to have a lot of rewritability for a house. I am more curious. The only reason this is not higher is 1, there's just stuff that I'm more excited for, but 2, dragons are large things. And the beauty of HHN is that claustrophobia, for the most part, of feeling tight and confined. And they do some grand things. I'm just curious how they're going to do gigantic dragons in a house. But the fantasy element could be fun. There could be some horror fantasy. There's just a lot of interesting lore that's already built into this story. It just wasn't lore that I grew up with or wasn't particularly interested in. I came in later, so I don't have as much emotional attachment as some other people, but I am very excited and very happy for those that did grow up with Dueling Dragons as one of their favorite rides. I think that's super cool that you guys get this back in a new and exciting way. At number 4, in the sake of symmetry, and it also just happens to work out, we have Stranger Things 4, and the description for Stranger Things 4 is, you must band together with your squad if you want to resist Vecna's gruesome curse. Take on the scariest season of Stranger Things yet. Like 11, now is your chance to stop him once and for all as you have the ultimate showdown in Vecna's blood-red mindscape. Every ending has a beginning. I'm super excited to see Stranger Things return. Not only Stranger Things returning, but arguably the best season of Stranger Things as a house. I think a lot of people didn't necessarily like Stranger Things the second time that it came to Horror Nights, and I think that's part of the reason why it's not higher on my own list, is just the reservations from the last time we had it for seasons 2 and 3. I think the biggest issues that house faced that this won't have to worry about is that was kind of jamming seasons 2 and seasons 3 together, just kind of shoehorning in season 3 stuff at the last minute, but also Netflix was especially protective about those just because season 3 was in the middle of airing when they were in the development cycle for this. So I think they were purposely being secretive so nothing got like leaked. Whereas season 4 of Stranger Things has been out for quite a while, so it's not like there's anything to spoil. I wouldn't be surprised if there was more collaboration between the teams because they're not worried about story elements getting out and they can be more just go for it. But also, I think there's a lot more Horror Nights stuff to put in this house. Like the Creel house, just anything with Vecna. They're clearly focusing on the Vecna side, which I think is a smart play. It helps narrow the focus a little bit. If we don't go to Russia at all in this house, I will not be sad whatsoever. I think that was a choice in this season just to kind of fill out the runtime a little bit. It just wasn't the most compelling. The only downside to this, I do not mind Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. I have a feeling I'm going to be sick of that song by the end of this event. Like, it was good. We're going to have to go through that entire Running Up That Hill phase all over again, aren't we? At number 3, we have Yeti Campground Kills, and the description is, Yeti or not, here they come. You and your friends are about to venture into a 1950s campground overrun by huge, menacing Yetis who rip apart anyone who gets in their way. You must flee to the Ranger Tower to escape. This is actually a house that has, like, slowly but surely, the more I've thought about it, climbed up my rankings. It was either this or Stranger Things for the 3rd spot, and this honestly could fluctuate anywhere. I know some people I've seen are kind of on the fence about Yetis. I like the big, dumb, campy fun houses every once in a while. I really like Swamp Yeti from 28. I really like Yeti Terror of the Yukon from 29. I think maybe I'm just kind of going into this with different expectations. So for some reason, I have been binge watching all of the old, like, Markiplier Bigfoot videos, like him and his buddies playing the Bigfoot game, and I'm going, that just sounds like so much fun, just being lost in the woods, hunting a Bigfoot. And then sure enough, they announced this as a house. I'm going, if you can capture the fun of those games, or just the general sense and fun that we had with the Yeti Terror of the Yukon house, I am so on board with this. Throw in the fact that it's a 1950s aesthetic, and we're going like a throwback house. Cool. I like any of the campy, goofy creature feature houses. I still defend Depths of Fear as really, really great. I cannot wait for this. I'm curious to see how they'll differentiate themselves from Yeti Terror of the Yukon. Hopefully it's not just a, we painted this one brown, so it's different now. But it seems like they said Yeti family, so we're gonna get like a mama Bigfoot, a baby Bigfoot. I'm on board with it. At number 2, it is the one that was number 1 for a while, and then something else came along. And number 2 is The Last of Us. And the description for The Last of Us is, you and your squad will encounter the haunting and overgrown world of Naughty Dog's video game in a brand new, terrifying way as you make your way through an abandoned Pittsburgh. Join Joel and Ellie, and don't make a sound if you want to survive clickers, hunters, and more. No matter what, keep finding something to fight for. The original Last of Us game is one of my favorite video games of all time. I have played that so many times. Naughty Dog is one of my favorites. Shocker! Here at Uncharted Media, we have a thing for Naughty Dog. Wow, never would have guessed it. I didn't love Last of Us 2 as much as some other people, but I also didn't hate it as much as some other people. So I am actually of the opinion that I'm more excited for the fact that it's based off the video game than the TV show. I think the TV show is excellent. I just think there's more horror and terror in the video game than the show. The show was playing up more of the drama, and they went a different narrative direction, which still works for television. It was fantastic. But the game is the game, and I love the game so much. And also, selfishly, I didn't get around to getting a whole lot of Last of Us merch when the game came out in 2013. I bought it on the PS4 remaster. So, selfishly, please bring all the merchandise. I will buy it, I promise, as long as you don't make the shirts white. Why did you do that? That was a weird choice, Universal. Give us different options. I love this game. I'm excited to see how they translate it, especially considering they worked alongside Naughty Dog's video game developer. That's super, super cool and interesting. Mark my words, though, I'm going to go into this 100% confident and excited, and then the first time I hear a clicker, I'm just going to, shut down right in the middle of the house, because as soon as I heard that the first time in the teaser for the show, I was going, oh, I tried to repress that horrifying memory. Thank you, because whoever did the sound design for the clickers that first time. Well, bringing one of my all-time favorite games to a house is obviously going to be pretty high, but this was number 1 until they announced something else that I have been begging and pleading for years now, and we finally get it at number 1, Universal Monsters Unmasked. And the description for Universal Monsters Unmasked is as follows. Descend into the Paris catacombs where you and your squad will face a new horde of monsters. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the Phantom of the Opera, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and the Invisible Man. Y'all, that is all I need. Invisible Man, I don't care. If this is just an Invisible Man house by himself, it's number 1. But the rest of these, I am super, super on board for. Y'all, I can't properly convey to you. I love the Invisible Man. He is my favorite Universal monster by a wide margin. I think his movie is fantastic. I think that and The Bride of Frankenstein are the 2 best of the classic Universal monsters. But the Invisible Man is still so drastically ahead of its time in its special effects. Claude Rains is fantastic in the role, and I have been begging and pleading to have the Invisible Man have some form of representation in houses for years. He was like the only one that didn't get any love in the house from 29, which is still my favorite house of all time, despite his absence. We finally get him, but I also like the choice for the other guys. I really liked how they did Phantom of the Opera in the House of 29 with the hallway of mirrors and his design with his face essentially melting off almost. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are interesting. Hunchback. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Hunchback are always kind of those like ancillary. We'll include them as universal monsters if we need to fill out a roster. They're not technically, I don't think, but they're throwing them in here. And I like that we're kind of getting these underrepresented monsters finally in a house. But the way that they're explaining it makes a lot of sense. Of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Jack Griffin, aka the Invisible Man, are on the run. They flee to Paris. That makes sense. You descend into the Paris catacombs. Perfect. That sounds like great set design. Just right now. I'm sure we'll get the Paris Opera House, the Fan of the Opera. Fantastic. I'm so hyped. If you somehow knocked off The Last of Us, one of my favorite games of all time, you know you're getting me excited. I think this year, top to bottom, sounds like a fantastic event, and the houses seem to really be bringing their A game. It's just a matter of how do they execute? Do they deliver on these enormous hype that we build up every single year? But this year's lineup seems incredibly strong. But what do you guys think? What's your hype list for Horror Nights this year? Let me know down in the comments below as I hear from you guys. And as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel if you like anything horror or movie related. And as always, stay sharp, horror fans.